Hey there, YouTubers. Right, so in this video, we're going to talk about reasons for buying the H610m and some reasons why not to. If you've seen the channel, you know that I have purchased at least 3 different H610ms. One was a Gigabyte, the other was an Asus, and the one that I still have, MSI Pro. These guys are pretty much the same motherboard, right? It's like identical features, very cheap, doesn't give you a whole lot of awesome features like you'll find on the better stuff. You'll have 2 RAM slots. You'll have PCIe 4.0 by 16, which is currently all you need. 1 smaller expansion slot, 4 SATAs, USB 3.0, maybe 1 or 2 USB 2.0s, HD audio, front panel connectors, a couple of fan headers. Of course, somewhere up here, a CPU fan header, a 1x8 for CPU power. All this stuff on the I/O shield, pretty much the same. Basically, there is nothing spectacular about this motherboard, but it does work, okay? And you can game on these. You can do all kinds of stuff with these. But is there better stuff out there? Of course there is. But not everybody needs the better stuff or can afford it. So let's start looking at the reasons for buying the H610m. And I think the first one, it starts with your choice of CPU. Now let's say you have decided upon a Celeron Pentium i3 1200 or maybe the i5 12400. This motherboard is pretty much all you need for those, okay? I mean, if you stick those CPUs in any other motherboards, you're pretty much going to get the same performance. There are some motherboards out there, certain DDR5s that you can get a lot more out of, but that's another story, okay? So you'll find that the manufacturer says that you can have any of the 12th gen motherboards in there, to include the new i9 12900KS with a BIOS update. What you'll find though, folks, is you are basically limiting these CPUs. You are going to lose performance. And I'm not talking about this line here. I'm talking about down here. I do not recommend this motherboard if you wanted to get an i5 12600K, i7 12700K, or the i9 12900K. Additionally, I don't suggest it for the i7 12700 or i9 12900. Now, will these work? Yes, they will work. I've had the i5 12600K in here. I've had the i7 12700, and I may even put the i9 12900 in one of them. I can't remember. When you run the benchmarks, you will find the scores are significantly less than if you put this in a decent motherboard, a higher-end B660M or a Z690. Okay, so keep that in mind. Lots of reasons why these are not the best. The TDP for this significantly higher than these lock CPUs. You saw no heat sinks. The power stage is bad. VRMs are bad. And you can't adjust power limits on this motherboard. So you're not going to be able to get anything out of this as far as increasing your ability to, we'll say, get a higher benchmark on Cinebench R23. Now, any of this stuff really affected the gaming? It may or may not, depend on the game. Alright, so I don't want to get too technical detail of why these guys are not that great, but if you watch some of the benchmarks out there, including mine, you'll see issues that you might get, power limit throttling, which may then turn into thermal limit throttling, and some other things like that. Moving on, reasons for buying H610m. You already have DDR4 RAM. So let's say you have 2 sticks of 2660 megahertz, and that's 2 times 8 gigs. So you got 16 gigs. Not going to make a lot of sense to go and buy, faster RAM, unless you're going to, shoot up there to the 4,000, 5,000 range, right? So if I'm have an H610m, the fastest RAM I can put in there is 3200 megahertz. And if I don't want to replace the RAM that I already have, then that's adequate for it, okay? Moving on, reasons for buying H610m, your budget. Not everybody can afford to buy new gear all the time. You know, I'm blessed with doing this, that the money I make from it goes right back into what I spend on the channel. And I end up, you know, with all kinds of great gear. But, you know, most people have limited funds to spend. And, you know, so maybe also you'd rather spend that money between the B660M and H610M on a better GPU, right? Or maybe even a better CPU. But in some situations, you know, that's probably not a bad route to take. Of course, there is a limit to how much better of a GPU, you know, one of those weaker CPUs will support. So obviously you don't want to pair a Celeron with an RTX 3090 or even a, you know, the i3 with the 3090. Okay, so now I get a lot of comments from people from other countries. You know, I'm in the U.S. and they tell me how their those motherboards are significantly more expensive. Here in the U.S., H610M, you know, comes in about $80 to $89, and then the cheapest B660M is right there, right around $100, I believe. But the B660s will shoot way up there into the hundreds of dollars. And there's a difference between, you know, the cheap B660M and the higher end. The cheap B660M is almost identical to an H610M, has a few better features on it. Then the biggest feature that's better is the ability to have the faster RAM. So, all right, continue on. Reasons for buying H610M. You have no interest in upgrading any components over the next 2 to 5 years. We'll talk more about this in detail, but you know, certainly there are people that don't want to open their computer up and mess with stuff. They'd rather pay somebody or buy a whole new computer. Continue on. You don't have an interest in becoming more computer knowledgeable and only care that your computer consistently turns on, right? So that, you know, if you really started to dive into the reasons to buy the better motherboards, you may find there are quite a few reasons to buy something better if you have the money. And definitely, you know, thinking about the future. And we'll talk more about that as we get into reasons not to buy H610M. So one thing that could happen, and to be honest with you, there are people out there that this would bother, right? You may have some gamer friends or you know, somebody in your family that you're concerned about that may give you crap for buying that H610M, right? You know, maybe it's not like back in the day when you bought the wrong type of car, right? Everybody says, oh, you should buy this Chevy Camaro. Going back to, you know, the days of when Mustangs were really, really popular. Instead, you go buy a Chevy Chevette or something, right? And people laugh at you. Well, you know, some people might laugh at you with your computer, you know, and you don't want that. I don't know. All right, reasons not to buy the H610M. You're always upgrading, always trying to get more out of your existing computer before starting over with a new build. So people like that, you know, hey, when new graphics cards come out, and not necessarily RTX 4000, because who knows, it's probably going to be PCIe 4.0, but RTX 5000 cards, PCIe 5.0, maybe after that, some point 6.0, 7.0. Maybe you're waiting for AMD 7000 series, which is supposed to have PCIe 5.0. If you have to have that, you know, maybe you don't settle for the H610M. Yeah, it's another $100 to get a motherboard that probably has PCIe 5.0, but the fact that you don't have to pull it out of the case and do all that other stuff, maybe, you know, that works out for you. And you're also thinking, well, maybe one day I want DDR5 RAM. Well, you know, there's a significant price difference between DDR4 RAM, if you haven't noticed, and the performance so far, from what I've seen, I have DDR4 and DDR5, has not really impressed me. Now, I have DDR5 4800 megahertz RAM. There is DDR5 6400 megahertz RAM out there. That may be a significant increase. And as that gets up to 7,000, 8,000, 9,000, whatever, 10,000, then it, you know, probably will become a bigger deal. More reasons not to buy the H610m. You already own 4 sticks of DDR4 RAM, right? Perhaps 2666 megahertz. Maybe it's 4 sticks of 3200 megahertz. If, you know, you have this, we'll say it's 32 gigs total. You buy an H610m, you're only able to put 2 sticks in there, so you only have the 16 gigs. If there's an application that matters to you, that you need 32 gigs or more, you may find that you have to buy all new RAM, right? 2 16 gig sticks, or, you know, whatever it may be. So that may not work out for you so good. All right, another example, you already own 2 sticks of DDR4 RAM, perhaps 4133 megahertz. Like, so I have that. If I put that in H610m, it's only going to run at 3200 megahertz if it's even compatible. There's some performance loss right there, right? Another reason not to buy the H610m, you don't think you'll be happy with an i3 1200. Well, no doubt there are people out there that would say that. And they may have had a i7 4th generation and don't realize the i3 1200 is probably a better CPU. So, but if you think, you know, yeah, i3 not going to work for me, then, you know, maybe the H610m isn't for you. If you go up to the i5 12400, you're still in there, but one day you may decide that even that's not good enough. Reason not to buy the H610m, you don't know how to use eBay or Craigslist. So myself, I have unloaded so much stuff on eBay and Craigslist and bought so much stuff there. But, you know, these things have a limited lifespan for me. You don't want to hold on to them to the point they're not worth anything. So eventually I will sell them. Probably sell everything off. Another reason not to buy, you blame your hardware for why you're no good at gaming, right? So that is one of those things, you know. I can't say that I feel that way. Like, I'm a decent gamer, but there's no doubt buying better hardware, you know, can help you. But either you have it or you don't, right? And it's just like what I like to think of with guitar. I, you know, used to have a cheaper guitar, and then I went and upgraded to some really nice guitar. Still, you know, the sound was a little better, but then I was like, I need a better amplifier. And years of going through amps and guitars, I realized it's the guitar player. You know, anybody that's got skills could make great music out of some of the gear I have. So it is definitely the guitar player. And then finally, folks, this is definitely a reason not to buy the H610m. You can't get enough of Linus and Steve, and therefore will feel like your PC is inadequate. So, ain't that the truth, right? You ever watch those guys? If you do, I had to stop watching them. You see on their channel, you know, so much great stuff. They're always getting the best gear. People are sending them stuff. They're buying stuff. And then, you know, you look at what you have and you're just like, God, I feel inadequate. I mean, even though I have an i9 12900, you know, and an RTX 3090, it's not good enough, you know. They might have 2 3090s in one computer, or they have a 3090 Ti, you know. Maybe they did SLI with them, right? Maybe they did some overclocking with theirs, or they have the fastest, you know, DDR5 RAM. Whatever it may be, it's not able to keep up with the Joneses in that aspect, right? So I don't think I'll ever be there, and I'm, you know, not necessarily trying to get to that point, but it is interesting when you think about it that they're part of the reasons for wanting to upgrade at times, just because you see what they get and like, oh, this would be better. So hey, thanks for checking out my video. That's gonna do it. Please like, please subscribe. Thank you.